Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yance, and today my guest is Erika Arlee. She is one of the founders of Honeyhead Films. She is a director and she is a writer. Enjoy. Okay, today I have a special guest. I have Erika Arlee. She is a writer, director. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So my first question is, where did your interest in the arts come from? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I have been on stage or making home videos since I was very young. So the arts have always been something that has captivated me from a very young age. And, whether it was directing my sisters in some home VHS movie, or acting out a murder mystery for one of my after school theater programs. It's always just been in my blood. So storytelling and performance art have always been something that has really had my attention and where I have always seen myself going as far as a career path.
Interesting. Was there something specific that kind of jumped out at you? Did you have a parent that pushed you into this, or did you see something on television, or do you see a play? Do you have that moment where it hit you like, oh, this is it?
I think honestly, the first time I watched myself in a home video, I think my mom was always very into capturing moments on tape. And, if we ever wanted to watch it back, I became enamored of not just seeing myself on screen, but the whole process of someone filming something happening and then being able to watch it and the storytelling aspect of that. So I guess like a fascination with, cinema verite or something from a very young
Interesting.
age.
So
Yeah.
you would like going back and watching it and kind of almost reviewing it and critiquing it.
A little bit,
That's
yeah. And I always was jumping in front of the camera as a young person and trying to
yeah.
create a scene, even if my mom was trying to capture just an authentic moment. I was jumping in front and trying to direct how the video turned out and always begging her to hold the camera. I was like, I want to do it. I want to. She never let me, but I think she was afraid I would drop it because I was 6 or whatever. So
yeah. Or you get to take it in the living room and then it gets
right.
trapped in the cord and you just
Right.
trip and it's like, oh no, there we go.
Right.
It's over. No more movies.
Right.
So it seems like you always had that drive to perform and work hard.
Yeah.
And you went to Carolina.
I did.
What do you think you learned from being at Carolina that you take with you today?
Yeah, so I studied dramatic art, theater, and creative writing when I was in university, and with the goal to own my own theater company. Originally, I was very interested in live performance. That was my primary focus. Filmmaking and movies felt just, over there on the left coast, and I wasn't really, wasn't sure how to break into the industry or even how to begin thinking about that. And so much of my upbringing had been with live performance. So I had decided that was what I was going to set my sights on. So I learned everything about playwriting, acting, directing for the stage, set design. I built sets when I was in school. And again, had a major focus on writing and storytelling, and wrote and directed some of my own plays while I was still in school. And then after I graduated, I didn't really want to move to New York. A lot of my peers went up to the city and I had visited a few times, always with the goal to love it. And I just couldn't find my feet there. So I found out there was a strong, thriving film community down in Wilmington. So I thought, well, maybe I can make this lateral jump and finally try my hand at filmmaking. And I'd actually had a professor and a mentor at Carolina who, in my senior year, I went into her office and we were talking about what was next. And she looked at me and she said, I really think you should think about film. And I had never thought about it, and I was like, oh man, Julie, you
Mm.
don't know what you're talking about. But he was like, I really think maybe you should try Los Angeles, or you should at least try getting into film. All of the plays I had written, the feedback I got was that it was too small for the stage. So
Mm.
I originally started out writing short stories, and then my professors and peers would say, your dialogue is so strong, but we don't really have a sense of place. All your exposition is missing. This should be a play. So I said,
Mm.
okay, I guess I'll turn this into a play. Then I would turn it into a play, and people would say, all of this action, the way you're describing these
Yeah.
small, minute facial expressions or actions or very minute details that no one would see from a stage. This isn't really something that would present in a live theater space, but this would be a good film. So I was
Yeah.
pushing back a lot against becoming a filmmaker or involving myself in that, because I think live theater and performance had my heart for so long, but I really got gently pushed in that direction. And then when I moved to Wilmington, that kind of sealed the deal.
What playwrights resonated with you?
Sam Shepard is a
Mm.
playwright who is also, involved in film. So I think that was a big part of someone who really inspired me, I think, because of his ability to cross genres in that way. Was
Mm.
someone who I studied in school, and then I suddenly realized he's in plays and he's in films, and he's writing them as well. So really impressive creative.
What was it about his plays that like stood out to you? I'm curious.
Um, I think just the sense of character, and
Yeah.
that I really connected with. And Ron Rash is another writer who's at Western Carolina. He's a professor, I'm pretty sure, and his stories have been turned into films. And he's also a great Southern writer. And I just really enjoy things that kind of have this like richness of character in place, and kind of the everyday. So I appreciate that when writers can demonstrate that. Jim Harrison is another one of my favorite writers who has had stories again turned into films, and screenplays. So this kind of crossover between, honestly, literary writers who have their stories turned into screenplays or assist in turning them into
Mm.
screenplays have really inspired me a lot, just with the way that they write these really real, grounded characters who are in some kind of relationship with their environment.
Mm. See, from listening to you, I thought of Tennessee Williams, because you
Mm.
talked about the heat
Mm-hmm.
when you were doing Lauralee, and all I could think of was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof,
Oh yeah.
and how that affects the play. So, what about Tennessee Williams? Did he just not resonate with you as much?
I think that at the time, also as a young person,
Yeah.
reading things that are set in a time and a place that you might, as a young person, have a harder time relating to some of those
Mm.
things, and the themes, but still a wonderful playwright. And I helped put up a couple of his plays while I was at
Yeah.
Carolina, because Carolina is in conjunction with Playmakers Repertory Theater, which is a professional rep theater in Chapel
Yeah.
Hill. So we got to see a lot of really well done plays while in school, which was always nice to go into class with your professors, and then on a Thursday night go watch them in a play. It was a real practice what you preach,
Yeah.
with the teachers. So I think that it held everyone accountable to their craft, which I think was really cool. But yeah, a lot of really excellent plays by Tennessee Williams, and
Yeah.
that sort of southern
Yeah.
storytelling. Yeah, really nice.
Now you mentioned New York and like
Mhm.
not falling in love with it. Do you think it's because when I went to New York, I kind of felt, I still feel the same way. You're so smashed in, it's very hard to think, like
Mm.
to be alone. And I gather just from your poetry and from things on Instagram, you like to be kind of we're open, you know,
Mhm.
and you can kind of do that in New York, but there's always some sound traveling around. Whereas like here in North Carolina, you can go out, to the woods and not really hear anything.
Mhm.
You can just be alone with your thoughts.
Yeah, I think for me, I think some writers probably get a lot of stimulation and ideas from being around a lot of people, like you would
Mm,
find in a city like that. But I'm a little bit the opposite as far as liking that peace and quiet, and also just liking nature. Honestly,
yeah.
I enjoy being out in nature and receive a lot of inspiration in times of quiet in nature, listening to music and being able to think about story. And that's not to say that in traveling, I love driving and I love road trips, because you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get to go out and be in the vast landscape. I love the American West, and see all of that and be out there and be inspired by nature, but you're also coming into contact with people you probably never would have met otherwise, in your
Yeah.
journey. And ultimately, people and human stories are also what bring inspiration inward, right? And seeing people and watching a small interaction happen, and you say, I wonder what that person's life is like, and
Yeah.
what is their story? Is it something I might be inspired to tell? And so I'm sure there are strangers out in the world that have no idea that I created a story because I saw them at a gas station.
So, all right, now, so you created Honeyhead Films.
Hmm.
Now you've kind of already talked a lot about this already, how you guys created it. I'm curious though, what is it about honey? Because I've seen honey in like a lot of the titles. Is there
Yeah.
something that just resonates with you?
Yeah. So we my business partner Christy Ray and I started our brand in 2016, and Honeyhead was just the first name that was thrown out and it stuck. And we had no idea at the time that the branding gold mine that we had fallen into by choosing that name, because you get all sorts of uh, brand collateral based off of that, including the honey, the
Yeah,
bees, the
bees, yeah.
hive. We call our creative community here in Wilmington our hive. And um, I
Mm,
think honey, what we like about it is that there's a double entendre there, because it's the sweetness and the way that we like to run our sets is with this caring and this human connection, and this counterculture attitude about how sets are normally run, and they can be really stressful environments versus how we like to run our sets, which is, you know, with empathy and efficiency. So
yeah,
they can coexist. Empathy and efficiency can coexist. And
yeah.
then also kind of reclaiming the word honey in a sense,
Mm,
is because as a woman in the industry,
mm,
and a young woman, oftentimes you get sort of
yeah,
dis
honey.
discredited in a way. It's okay, honey, let me handle this, honey. But now
Yeah,
people say, oh, it's the
bless
honeys,
your
and it's
heart.
like it's a positive, yeah, very bless your
Yeah,
heart. Well, okay, well,
bless
let
your
me
heart. You
see.
worked really hard on that, but we're not going to
Yeah.
use it.
Uh, but now people say,
Yeah,
oh, the honeys are here. The honeys are handling
the
that. And it's
honeys
like
are here.
it's a
Oh, that's
positive
cool.
thing now. So we've sort of tried to reclaim
Yeah.
that word a bit.
Now you went to Denver.
Mhm.
What brought you back to North Carolina?
Honestly, the company. When I was living out in Colorado, it was I was living two lives in a sense. I
Mm,
really enjoyed living in Denver, and like I said earlier, I just love the American West and the Rocky Mountains. It's such a beautiful landscape, and I really enjoyed my time there. Denver is a really cool city, and actually, I met some lifelong collaborators of ours there. Andrea Nordgren, who's another producer at Honeyhead. She's kind of our Denver satellite queen bee,
mm,
we call her. But she, I met her on a pro bono project. She needed a cinematographer, and I just volunteered. It was no pay, but it was for a great nonprofit. And something in my soul just told me I needed to meet her. I had never met her in my life, and she posted this job, and I was like, I feel like I need to work with this woman. I don't
yeah,
know what it
yeah.
is. And she's been a collaborator since then, in a huge way. She helped make our feature film happen in a major way. She's a producer on that project. But even with all of that, I was still spending about half of my month in Wilmington and half of my month in Colorado while I was living there. And it just started to get to a point where Honeyhead was maturing as a company in a way where it required me to be present and in person, and to help basically push the brand and the company to the next level and where we wanted to go, which was narrative film production. And it's just hard to do that when you're remote from your business partner.
Yeah. Just be Skyping and Zooming.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what films resonate with you?
Oh, that's
Like
in genre or specific films?
Like, yeah, specific films. Like what touches you?
I love this one of the films that inspired me to write Imogene is called Mickey and the Bear, and I saw it at the Denver Film Festival in 2019. James Badge Dale is in it, and it's about a daughter-father relationship. The father is a veteran that's suffering from PTSD, and he has an opiate addiction, and it's about his daughter, who is a senior in high school, and about her decision whether or not to stay with him. She's basically become his physical and emotional caretaker, more like a mental caretaker. He's pretty unstable. And the film is about her decision whether or not to go to college and leave him and assert her independence, or to stay with him. So she's in this kind of toxic cycle with him, which Imogene shares those themes. And when I saw that film, it really inspired me, because I was like, it's possible for people to believe in this type of storytelling that's very quiet and character driven, and about these intimate relationships that you don't often see on screen. So that film inspired me greatly of late. And I grew up watching a lot of films my dad loved. I watched a lot of Steven Spielberg films growing up, a lot of Martin Scorsese films. So kind of introduced to those kind of epic, Hollywood films, those grand adventures from like the 70s, 80s, 90s growing up, which I think is part of what inspired me to become a filmmaker and made me a little bit obsessed with visual on-screen storytelling, and the way that you tell stories and how to get creative with it, like a classic Spielberg opening where you don't know what's going on. It's like he's drawing the audience in, and you're like trying to figure that out.
And they're using practical effects too. It's not CGI. So like he would, he's using full sets.
I think that I love that. I love films that still lean into practical effects, and aren't too heavily CGI'd in this way. And when Chloe Zhao came out with Nomadland, I went back and reviewed her catalog, and I think she's also an inspiring storyteller from this kind of like docu-narrative standpoint, and the way that she shot that film feels very similar to A Song for Imogene, in this way where it's a lot of use of natural light and real people. A lot of our cast in Imogene were first-time actors, or people that had a few credits here and there, but a lot of first-time talent. And then a lot of there were folks that we just pulled in from the community, or people that were already at this convenience store that we just wanted them to be in the film. So I love that sort of that truth telling that you can do with cinema, and I think that's what brings out that authenticity.
Well, you mentioned in the podcast, you're talking about how you guys wanted a reel to look gritty, and you mentioned the film Winter's Bone.
Oh yeah.
And when I think about that, that's kind of how that movie feels. It's very much like these real people, and some of them are actors, but some of them it looks like they just plopped them right there. They're just
right.
No people.
And it's interesting that you say that, because now Jennifer Lawrence is like a huge
That's
star.
the first time I saw
her. And it's interesting because in the casting process for Imogene, we were faced with the decision of whether or not we wanted to pursue casting a name actor in the film. And
Mm.
ultimately we decided it would do the film a disservice to do that, because if you're going along on this journey,
Yeah.
with Cheyenne, the protagonist, who Christy plays, and then, suddenly, like, Nicole
Jennifer
Kidman
Lawrence.
or like Jennifer Lawrence or Brie Larson pops up and she's like there. You're like, what is she doing in like rural Eastern North Carolina? Like, you're
And
so
that's kind of
distracted.
and that's the catch 22 of being out there too much, is it's like,
Mhm,
I don't, the thing I think though is, for you and me who are like really observant, we'll notice
mhm,
that stuff. But I think for the
mhm.
casual audience, they don't realize that what actor is who. Like, like I
Right.
know immediately who it is. Like, it's very hard to shock me. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like, yeah, you're all of a sudden you're here and it's like, oh, and here comes Nicole Kidman and here's Laura Dern, and they're all here, and we're all supposed to believe that, there's just something about, using somebody that's unknown, because you can let the audience just put whatever they want into there. It's almost like
Mhm,
a blank canvas for them,
mhm.
telling the story. Whereas you use a
Yeah.
name, it's like, oh, I saw them on Good Morning America talking about it.
Yeah. And
Wow,
I
they look
think,
dirty.
yeah, exactly. Oh, they don't look like that. They look,
Yeah.
or, it's like a whole thing, there's a whole like article in Variety about how like
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman didn't wear makeup in this film. And it's like so gritty,
Yeah.
because she didn't wear
Yeah.
makeup. And it's like, man, so,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it would be
Speaking
wonderful
of,
to work with a like,
yeah.
A-list actor at some point, but it wasn't right for this film.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of Winter's Bone, I remember she went to the Academy Awards. It was like, oh, wow, she doesn't look like,
Yeah.
she doesn't, she's wearing this red dress and everything. And, I'm so used to her like being out in the country or whatever and, killing squirrels.
Hmm.
Did you ever see the film Certain Women? Have
I
you ever
have
seen that
not.
film? You
Mm-mm.
should watch that. That's done by, because when I was, looking at it, it reminded me of Kelly Reich. I'm going to butcher her name, Reichardt,
Mhm.
a great female filmmaker. Did it? You should look at that. That's an interesting.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting film. Interesting. So moving along here, so one of the things I'm fascinated with is, you kind of already alluded to this, is you like showing the grit of the South.
Mhm.
Is that something that just like growing up, that like you just are like kind of drawn to that imagery?
Yeah, growing up, my mom is from a small town in Eastern North Carolina,
Mm,
that people call Little Washington. It's Washington, North Carolina, but anyone that's from there calls Little Washington.
Little Washington.
Yeah. And growing up, driving from Chapel Hill, which is in the middle of the state, out, east, I would just sit in the backseat of my parents' minivan, and I would just watch all of the tobacco fields and the cornfields go by. And I would notice sometimes that we would get to like a T stop in the road, and there would be a gas station and maybe like a Dollar General and a fast food, joint. And that was kind of it. And that was a town. And there were roads that went off in either direction. And we would just drive right through on our way somewhere else. And I became a little fascinated with what the lives of the people that were living down these dirt roads, or these, the roads
Yeah.
going, you know, east
Yeah.
west, if we were going north south on the main road. And what were their lives like off in these back roads? And did they have dreams the same way I did? Did they have access, you know, to the thought of being able to get out? Did they want to get out? So this idea of this flight from the hometown and those themes that, Cheyenne deals with in A Song for Imogene are all part and parcel of my thought process, going back to my mom's hometown and seeing where she came from, and thinking about, okay, everything she did with her life, and then her talking about friends that still lived there, or thinking about all of these small southern towns where it's like generations of families live here and exist here, and what that would be like, because my nuclear family is very dispersed now, and we have a great relationship. But growing up, it was like if you wanted to go see your cousins, it's like you had to drive up to Pennsylvania or down to Florida or out to California, and thinking about all these people that just have plots and they live, with their family, and everyone just grows up here. I was just
And they've
fascinated
never
by that.
left. And
Yeah,
they've never
yeah.
left the town. It's very similar to film noir. Like
Hmm.
they're just kind of stuck there. There's this
Yeah,
this box that just they can't see past it. Which
yeah.
do you think that the South gets misinterpreted in
I
film?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that oftentimes the South is used as a caricature
Yeah,
in
no,
in
it
a
is.
way. It gets misinterpreted as a place where, people are ignorant, or inbred, and
Yeah.
um people don't think about the fact that like even if you have a Southern accent, it doesn't mean you're stupid. Do you know what I
I
mean?
know. It's so sad. Like
um yeah.
yeah, like I would be in New York and tell them I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and they'll be like, I can tell they're like picturing barns or whatever. Like, so is it like, I'm like, no, it's a metropolitan city. It's just like
Hmm.
any other city.
Yeah,
There's nothing different,
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
it's like in their head, it's like, so I don't know, it's kind of fascinating with
It
that.
is. And I really wanted people to see. I feel like the Midwest is kind of getting its shining moment with,
Yeah.
things, shows like Ozark, or Winter's Bone set in
Or
Missouri.
Brokeback
And
Mountain,
but
where they
yeah.
just shows it in all this glory, and it's like this
Hmm.
beautiful place. And then, yeah, the South, they kind
Yeah.
of like,
And
hey,
I
how you
feel like
doing there, man?
Yeah, I feel like the South deserves a moment to just be seen and
Yeah.
heard in this way. On screen in an authentic light that isn't like, Daisy Dukes and,
Yeah. It's
just
not Dukes of
Sweet
Hazzard.
Home Alabama or whatever. So I feel like
Yeah.
there's space for that type of
Yeah.
storytelling and Southern storytelling. So I really hope that I hope Imaging can be one of many films, that comes
Yeah.
out.
With when you're writing, do you start with a place or a sound, or what usually comes first?
Oh wow, that's a great question. um for me, music and
Mm,
sounds, or landscapes, all will jumpstart a story for me. Oftentimes it's a scene that I see in my head, and um I'll just see an interaction or see a character doing something, or see the way I would compose a shot of a character in this like epic wide, or in like this intimate,
yeah.
on a porch with some slanted light, and I'm like, what are they doing there in my imagination? It's like they just come to me. And um often accompanied by music if I'm listening to a song or some other, or even a sound, like you said, and they just kind of appear there, and I'll start to build a story around them. That's typically where I begin. And sometimes I start writing not even knowing where the story is going to go. And then other times I will outline an entire screenplay before I start. It just depends.
Yeah, depends.
Yeah.
Do you feel you need isolation when you like to write?
Um, de- Depending on my mood, sometimes I'll take my laptop out into public and, go to a coffee shop or something like that, to
Mm,
be around other people and to be around kind of the white noise
yeah.
of humanity, I guess, in a
Yeah,
way.
David Lynch talked about that. He would be writing about all
Mhm.
these dark things, but he'd be in the coffee shop and have his pie and and his coffee, and it would be like,
Mhm.
I may be going into these dark things, but I'm in this safe place, so
Yeah, because it helps you from getting too totally sucked in, especially when you are
yeah,
writing difficult subject matter or darker subject matter. Sometimes you can
yeah,
get, lost
yeah.
in that a little bit. And so being around other people and reminding yourself of what's reality
Yeah.
can be
It's like, wait a
helpful.
minute, I gotta get out of
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Suppose
exactly.
going to like a cabin and just being lost, like, well, we didn't see her again. 3 months
Yeah,
later,
yeah, yeah. I think that would be hard.
just comes
I've
back and be
gone
like, it's
It
done.
would be hard. I've gone into writing holes before, to finish Imaging or to get some
Yeah.
good leeway on this next feature that I'm writing right now, but I'll sometimes put myself into a writing hole, but it's mostly just for productivity, just to like get stuff on the page. If
Mm,
I'm under a deadline, or if I'm feeling writer's block, sometimes I just force myself to sit and write,
yeah.
and for 5 days straight or something, and I just have to take my inner
Yeah.
filter away and say, you know just keep writing, and then go back and review it later, but don't like edit as you go. I have like a
Yeah.
perfectionist streak that keeps me sometimes stagnant
Yeah.
my writing process, so I have to just say, okay, I'm gonna write to write and try to get like
Yeah.
5 pages
Even if it
done
doesn't
today
make
and call it.
sense, just
Yeah.
just put it, you're putting something down. You're
Hmm.
building the repetition, because it's like
Yeah.
at least you got
Yeah.
something down,
Yeah.
as opposed to just sitting there and you could just be stuck in your thoughts and like, I don't know.
Hmm.
But then when you
Yeah.
sit at the keyboard, or do you like to write the keyboard, or do you write with pen? How do you?
Sometimes I'll outline in on a
Mm,
piece of paper. Because I'm so visual, I like to kind of, do a visual outline, or to kind of do like my structure, figure out, what's happening act one, act two, act three, and kind of do all of that visually. But when it comes to writing, I usually write on a computer because I'm just faster at typing than I am at
yeah,
writing by hand. And oftentimes when I get into a flow, especially with dialogue and characters are talking to each other, it's like I can barely write fast enough. They're talking to each other in my
yeah,
brain. So I'm like, it's like if you were in the room with someone dictating a conversation and you have to write
yeah,
as fast as they're talking. So,
yeah. Like sometimes I like to write where I kind of write what happens, and I'm like, I'll
mm-hmm,
fill in that later. What
mm-hmm.
what is gonna happen with that. Um, Interesting. What about so music? What kind of music do you like to listen to when you write? Or it varies?
Ambient music, not or non-lyrical
Really?
music. Mm-hmm.
Same
Yeah.
here. I love
Yeah.
I love ambient music. It's like
Ambient for sure. Or
just
sometimes film scores. But it has to be the right film score.
oh, awesome. What film scores do you like? I'm curious.
I love I probably my favorite scores to write to are the Lord of the Rings soundtrack.
Mm,
And
I would sure.
and the Inception score is very good.
It's a
Um,
good score. Is that
yeah,
not a good
yeah, the
score?
score to Inception is excellent for me for writing. It just has this sort of like, especially if it depends on the scene I'm writing, but if I'm writing something
Yeah.
that is like pretty intense, I'll usually put on the score to Inception and I'll just right
Oh, that's
away.
so cool.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that you love film scores. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, when I tell people that, I'm like, yeah, I'm working out to the hours today. It, most people just like it's either rock or hard rap or whatever. But like, I like listening. Sometimes when you listen to a film score, you almost see the movie back, and
Hmm.
it just gives you that feel. So I'm a big film score guy. I just
Hmm.
love listening to that. That's like one of the things I notice immediately in a film is like the film score. Even in like Birthday Cake, I noticed I was like, oh, what is that? Who did
Yeah.
that? I
Yeah.
like that sound there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel probably the only person goes to like a film festival. Like, can you give me the score?
It's so interesting. The
Yeah.
Our editor for imaging, Logan Tabor, actually wrote the score for Birthday Cake.
Mm,
And we talked about it because he's also a really excellent musician in addition to a picture editor. And
mm,
we were talking about it, and he was like, I have this kind of Juno, Little Miss Sunshine vibe, because it's like, even though it's kind of like the
yeah.
sisters are getting into an argument, there's still this kind of lighthearted nature to it. And I was
That
like, I
like
love that. And that was
uppity.
like his
Yeah.
first pass. And I was like, I love this. Like we tweaked a little
Yeah.
bit, but it was really like perfect on the first go round. With He just kind of like understood where it should come. I mean, as an editor, I
And
think he
that's
understood kind of where it should come in and how it should flow.
yeah.
So that was a really fun collaboration.
What about the Social Network? That's an interesting score
Yeah,
there.
yes.
Where it's got Trent Reznor came up with that like small, just couple of keys. in this fading background to open the
Mm-hmm.
film, and I was just like, it's just amazing. And then listening to
Yeah.
him talk about how throughout the film they would bring it back. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I
Oh
love film
yeah.
scores.
I love composition in school in film is so fun and recurring themes, and I love that. And it makes a
Yeah,
huge difference. I mean, score
it does.
in film can, I feel like, make or break an
Yeah,
audience member's emotional arc.
yeah. I mean, most people don't even realize that the score. I'll be
Yeah.
like, "Did you hear that score?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's a good, then
So
it's a
that's
good score, right? If you don't realize you're hearing
yeah.
music, but
If you
you're
don't
feeling
notice it,
something. Yeah, it's like you don't notice
yeah,
it comes in and then suddenly you're like, I'm feeling some feels. What is
yeah,
that? And you're like, it's the music. But it's so subtle,
yeah,
you don't even realize it's there. Yeah.
yeah. Howard Shore, his work with David Cronenberg is,
Mm.
really interesting. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I had to audition for this film, and I was listening to the Brood score, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this feels so
Mm-hmm.
dark and
Yeah.
gritty," and he just comes up with that. So, anyways, let's talk a little bit about birthday cake. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about how that came together. Because I just loved it. It was such a
Thank
nice
you.
little film. Everything's contained, but it
Mm-hmm.
felt lived in. The
Mm-hmm.
dialogue felt, yeah, it had a lot of patience, but then it's kind of like the Odd Couple at first, kind of
Mm.
meeting these two that they're like, okay, here's the one that's all put together. Here's the one that's kind of just, it's like, oh, just buy a cake. It's like, no, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
make a cake,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love sister relationships. I'm the middle of three girls in my
Mm,
family, so I love sister relationships. And honestly, like the nugget of that film came from um standing in the kitchen of a friend of ours house. Chrissy and I were actually standing in a kitchen and loved our friend's kitchen. It was like he had designed this beautiful kind of rustic kitchen, and we were like, we just want to make a movie to shoot in this kitchen. It's so interesting
yeah.
looking. And so there was this, and we were like, what if it was like sisters, and there should be something happening outside that raises the stakes. And we were like, what if there's a party happening outside? So there was this, we sort of riffed on this idea, and nothing really ever came of it. And when I was living in Denver, I met these two gals, the two actresses that play the sisters in the film, and um, we had worked together on a proof of concept trailer for another feature film, and I was the DP, and Ashley, who's the blonde gal, the younger
Mhm.
sister, was in that, and then Maya, the gal who plays the older sister, was the AD for the project. And
Oh,
we
really?
were at a screening for the proof of concept, and they were talking to each other after at the little party we were having after, and I was like, y'all would play really fun sisters. And I was like, and I was like, I feel like there's this idea that's been hanging out in my brain, um and I love writing for actors, so I wrote those roles for them. And
Yeah.
so, and I think that short films are a nice, they can be a nice slice of life treatment of some kind of greater story. And I think that's okay for what they are. I think sometimes people try to make a full beginning, middle, and end to a short film. But I think they can
Yeah.
be these like glimpses into a life. And in the short format can be that way. So we had one shoot day and like no budget. So there's just like a weekend, a bunch of people, friends got together and worked on it. So that's kind of where it came from, was just from I sent the script to the gals, and then a friend of mine, Troy, who was the cinematographer who I had worked with before, um I think Maya shared the script with him, and he like called me up and was like, I really want to shoot this, like, can we make this happen? I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I just wrote this, like, I wasn't really expecting anything to come of it, but he helped put together the crew, and I found the location, and we all just, like I said, came together on a day and made a little short. And it was just kind of a bunch of folks in Colorado doing something creative with each other for a day.
Now the color palette, that's something I've
Mm-hmm.
seen but was that was there something to that? Like the colors that you used there?
Yeah, so Troy also colored the film, and he used some vintage lenses that kind of gave
Mm,
like that we were able to play with some of those flares, like the light that we kind of keyed in through the window, that gives all
yeah.
those that nice backlight and flare of that sort of
Yeah, give it this
penultimate
like kind of
vignette of the
dark,
sisters.
it gives it that dark feel, like it's very light and stuff, but the way you've kind of got it this, tint around it, which is kind of what, I kind of imagine like that's probably what you're seeing in your head when you're writing. There's
Yeah,
a lot of it is yeah, but I just loved it. I mean, I was just watching that. I was
yeah,
just like, wow, this is so great. You're right. It's just a nice slice of
yeah.
life.
And I
They
think as an
found
actor,
peace.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think as an actor, I love writing, uh, heavy given circumstances and letting a scene play out with that. So having
Yeah.
each character have a secret and each one be kind of, I love
Yeah.
when scenes when characters are doing like a subtextual dance around each other is like my favorite thing to write. And I also love watching it. And I think it's the actor in me that loves that. So
Yeah.
that's really, that whole film is kind of a treatment in subtext, really. And when it finally comes out, all of the emotions that finally come out when we like dance around trying to
Yeah.
like say everything without saying it, to each other and reading between the lines, it's like
Yeah.
that can be exhausting. And when it finally comes out, you have like often a break of emotion.
And it just builds, and then they kind of just, they found this nice place, okay, they both, love each other as sisters, but
Hmm.
you know, where it goes from there, we don't know.
Hmm.
Like this is nice peaceful moment.
Hmm.
I understand you and you understand me type of moment,
Hmm.
which you sometimes get with your siblings. There's those moments you
Yeah.
have where you kind of understand each other, and it stays for a minute and then it'll go away and then you come back. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, that about does it for my interview with Erika Arlee. This is the end of part 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I suggest you check out honeyheadfilms.com. As always, you can find me at Justin Yachts, and I will see you next time on the DMF.